Hello, everyone, and welcome to another tournament review by PMTT. This time I am here with Paddy, who took out the best sports at the most recent Gauntlet 6 in Toowoomba. So, how you doing tonight, man?
Yeah, not too bad yourself.
Yeah, pretty good for a Friday. So, this recording is a little bit delayed compared to the previous tournament reviews we've done because a lot has happened in AOS in the past couple of days, or past couple of weeks, really. So yeah, just a tad.
Just a tad, just a small bit, yeah.
So I've been frantically trying to figure out all the new stuff to continue the series, and I'm sure Paddy has been really going through all of the new releases and the new details to try and figure out what he's going to be
Try,
bringing to the upcoming tournaments.
yeah, try and stay up to date always on
Yeah,
just about everything.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what you have to do if you want to compete and if you want to do well at tournaments. You need to have an understanding of everything that's happening in the hobby at the moment. So, but before
yeah.
we get into the stuff that is happening currently, let's roll back a bit. How did you get into the hobby in the first place, man?
I got introduced to by a friend of mine at the time at school. He introduced me to the hobby. Jesus Christ, nearly 22 years ago, which is making me feel very old right now and grey and wizard.
Yep.
But yeah, I got introduced back into the hobby way back then. But back then, I wasn't a fantasy or a Sigmar player because obviously that shit didn't exist. Well, Sigmar didn't anyway. But I played 40k a lot,
Yeah. Okay.
like a lot, a lot.
Yep.
But I made the jump over to Sigmar when eighth dropped for 40k.
Yeah. Okay.
When that Yeah, when that dropped, I didn't want anything to do with the game anymore because I didn't really like it. But I really enjoyed had a few games against friends of mine like Gammy and all those kinds of guys. And had some just really enjoyed the game, so I just stuck with it from there on out.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. Like, I know I've been playing tabletop games for 20 years as well, so you're not alone in as one of the kind of the people that's been around for a while. But it's a perfect example, like you said, when eighth dropped, you switched from 40k to Sigma, and
Yeah,
that's what's happening. Like, I'm seeing it at the moment, especially up here in Toowoomba. One release comes out and an entire group switches from one game to another. So we had a massive
yeah,
Blood Bowl community, and then they had an update, and then they've all switched. So half of them are playing Conquest, half are playing Underworlds, and they've switched again. And I think now they're on Star Wars. So, but
yeah. Tendency to go with whatever's popular or whatever is sort of doing well at the time, which I suppose is decent from Games Workshop because they have so many game systems now. But yeah,
yeah, well, that's it. Like, it's a community game. It doesn't matter if you've got the best rule set in the world. If no one else is playing it, you're not going to enjoy
yeah,
playing it by yourself. So,
yeah, pretty much.
yeah, yeah. So the reason I've got Paddy on, like I said before, is he actually got voted the best sportsman of Gauntlet 6, which is a huge achievement because best sports is often one of the most sought after
I'll
rewards. But it's
I'll be
some
honest, it's one of my proudest trophies at the moment.
that's that's awesome, man. That's awesome. So the
Because
biggest
I usually don't get sports always, but sometimes I do, and when it happens, I think it's pretty dope. Anyway,
Well, I reckon getting best sports is probably the hardest award to win in an event because you
yeah,
can't feel bad about not getting it. If you see someone else gets it, you're just like, well, they really are a top bloke anyway, so they deserve it.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Makes you feel good on the inside.
yeah, yeah. Well, it
Yeah,
means that you, for a gauntlet event, it means you played 3 games and your opponents thought you were an absolute top person to play against. So, and
no,
that's like, you can't get a better compliment than that.
no.
So before we get on into your games, what did you take? What made the game so enjoyable?
Well, that's kind of the weird thing. I took Caradron Overlords to the tournament, and they are not known for being like you don't get a good play experience against Caradrons often
Yeah.
because just how the army operates, being a mainly shooting heavy list, like it's very like you don't get a lot of reactionary things against them. So I honestly wasn't expecting it because of that. So the fact that it still happened was pretty good. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Massive compliment to you. So what
yeah.
was in the list?
I ran a fairly standard Caradron list. I just took an Ironclad, an admiral, especially now that he got a new war scroll. So that was kind of a bit compulsory. And then I took a navigator, and then I ran a what do they call it? A engine master and dirigible suit,
Yep.
which unlocked some battle line options for me, which gave me 3 units of engine riggers with drill cannons and athematic volley guns, and then I ran 3 gun haulers, and I think that was it from memory.
I think you had at least one big boat. Did you have a
Yeah,
frigate?
an ironclad. I
An
had an
ironclad.
ironclad.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah. And
kind of a bit of
that was the
everything.
big game.
A bit of everything
Yeah,
in the army. A lot of high mobility. A lot of shots. Um,
yeah.
really kind of playing into the objective game and the like area denial and just kind of staying away, chipping them down before you.
Well, the list was a bit special because I took Barak Mornar as my Skypork, and one of their abilities is they get a relic, and that relic, you pick an enemy unit during the start of the charge phase, and it halves its charge distance,
Hmm.
which again, not really player friendly, like opposing player friendly, because they kind of want to get in combat with you, and you can really like mess with them and limit their options. So
Yeah. Yeah. I know I've
yeah,
been on the receiving end of that artifact the last time that we played, and I was not
yeah,
giving you my sports after having to face off against that artifact. It was
yeah,
quite annoying. But it
yeah,
was still a fun game from memory. So
yeah.
that was back at the Toowoomba Open. So
Yeah, but
um,
that's KO.
yeah, yeah, and that's
Yeah.
it. So your first game, so the first round was power and numbers, and your first opponent was Gary, one of the other local Toowoomba guys, who brought his Flesh Eater
Yep.
courts. Walk us through that game.
Well, flesh eaters don't usually like playing against Caradron players at the most part because of the amount of shooting that they bring. But Gary had just a bunch of ghouls, like a big block of ghouls, another small squad of ghouls, 2 Terrorgeists, or a Terrorgeist and a zombie dragon from memory, an Archregent, and then like a big block of flyers, and that
Yeah,
was his list. So
yeah,
with
so
the Carnival throne, obviously.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
how did that game play out? Like I'm assuming he tried to kind of pin you down and try and rip you apart, or did you manage to
Yeah, pretty
avoid him?
much. But my list, I was very low drop. I was only a 2 drop list. So I just played early on a little bit defensively, which and gave Gary the first turn. So that way I could always just try to play for the double. Which when you play against a
Mm,
Caradron army, when they usually do get the double, it's pretty goddamn devastating. And that's basically how that kind of went out, sort of turn 2-ish, turn 3-ish. I got the double on Gary and was able to like nuke his 2 Terraghysts in a turn and
yeah,
then just clean up after that. So
yeah. So really play for that attrition win in the
yeah,
middle of the game, and then
yeah,
just take him out from there. So yeah,
yeah,
so you won that one. Um,
yeah,
not a big win from memory, but still a decent win.
yeah, yeah. So Gary was all still able to play for objectives and all that sort of stuff, but I just with the amount of damage that Caradron's put out, yeah, it was just a bit too much,
Yeah,
especially after the double turn.
yeah. And his spec list is quite good, but it probably does struggle to really catch up once you take the attrition lead. So once you can
Yeah,
take out a couple of those key pieces, he really has nothing that can really counter what you have left as the game goes
yeah.
on. Yeah,
Yeah, it just becomes too much for them. They like even though Feck can like bring models back, they can't bring sort of models back if they're all dead, sort of type thing. So
yeah. Yep, that's one way to deal with them. Um,
yeah,
so going into round two, the second round was Tooth and Nail, and you were up against
yeah,
Nurgle, which Cam brought. What did he
yes.
bring to the fight?
His was a bit of a bitzer list. He had a bit of everything in it. He took a great unclean one, a big unit of plague bearers. I think it was 30 plague bearers. Then he took some plague drones. Then he took some blight lords. Had I think it's a master of afflictions. Made on the drone as well.
The Lord of
Um,
Afflictions, I think it is.
yeah, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
It's a big Nurgle factor on a drone.
Yep.
He had one of those, and then he had some Nurglings as well.
Yeah, okay. So just
From
kind of a good mix of all kind of the demons. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, and he also had the a unit of 5 Pascal Blight Kings and Gut Rot.
gut rot, yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
They're a very strong play for Nurgle. So it's not
Yeah.
surprising to see them being brought out. So how did that game go? Was it very similar to the game against Gary, or did he kind of manage to weather the storm long enough to find you?
It was kind of the same against him. Nurgle being Nurgle, they're pretty slow. But which is kind of like you need a sort of a faster, harder hitting army against Caradrons because you need to catch them.
Yeah,
But I was able, again, same. It's always the same sort of similar play for KO at the moment because their book is not so brand new. But I took him apart, so I was able just to focus on his right flank, shoot it out, and then move when I double turned him going into 3, and was able to shoot out his sort of left flank, which had all these like flies and stuff on it.
yep,
And then when I pushed in for the double, um, I literally the admiral has a new like weapon that basically allows you to ignore ward saves.
yeah, okay.
And I was able to turn off the Great Unclean One's ward save and
Ooh,
just shoot it to death.
yeah, that's a big swing if you can take that out, especially taking out off that 5 plus. So yeah.
Yeah, well, at that time it was actually a 4-up because of the Nurgle wheel.
Oh man, that's a huge swing. So
Yeah, yeah. So I was just like, yeah, sorry about this. Have a grenade, no ward save, shoot, 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 dead.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
and there's not much you can do when you can turn off tech like that and really just be able to apply the pressure where you need it to be. So
yeah. So
yeah,
that was my second game
yeah. So
against the Nurgle.
yeah, so going into the last round, you got matched up against Paul with his Stormcast. Now you were both undefeated going into it. The matchup was Feral Foray. How did that game go down?
Uh Usually I shoot people to death, but against the Stormcast, I got shot to death. So he literally was a 1-drop, me being a 2-drop. He had a big block of Judicators with Boltstorm crossbows. With the ruling on being able to teleport and still double tap with Thunderous Volley, he was able to teleport them across, shoot me twice with 15 Judicators into my Ironclad. It was pretty hard to protect the clad on that mission. So he was able just to teleport away and literally just unloaded everything in the clad, blew it up. And then from there, I made one silly mistake going into the third turn, um, and it cost me the game. Looking back on it now, but it's just unfortunate. It was just a very firepower heavy orientated Stormcast list that I just couldn't deal with. So
Yeah, yeah, and
yeah,
that's it. When you're at the the top table at an event, going into the last round undefeated, that's often what it is. You make a
yeah,
mistake. It might not be a huge game changing mistake, but against a good player with a solid list, you throw in a little bit of luck, and then
yeah,
that turns into it just a downhill drop from there. So, but if you get to the final round and you lose the final round from a mistake, I don't actually see
yeah,
that as that bad. Like you've only made a mistake. Like
yeah,
against a good player, like if I played you and I made a mistake,
yeah.
odds are I would lose the game because you're a
Yeah.
good player
It
and
it
that's
just
what you need.
it just like me personally, it irritates the living piss out of me when I do something like that. I really try and avoid doing things like that, but
Yeah,
usually you come down to like the last round, you're a little bit tired from like, playing games all day and all that sort of stuff, and you just make one little mistake and I don't know, it just eats at me when I do something like that. So
oh yeah, yeah. But the
yeah,
big thing is, you can make a mistake, but you can't make that same mistake again. And that's it.
yeah,
You're going to remember it.
that's
You're
the
not going to
idea.
make that same mistake. So, and
Yeah,
that's how you get better. That's how you play more
yeah,
games. You get better. You make less mistakes because you remember all the previous mistakes that you made. So,
yeah,
but at the end of the day, you walked home with best sports. So before we deep dive into that, Jacob took out first place
yep,
with his Stormcast. Paul, with his Stormcast as well, who you played in the final round, took out second.
yep,
And then Jono, one of their mates, with his IDK, took out third. So out of the 4 guys that came down, we do have to apologise to Eddie for letting those 3 guys take the podium, because I'm sure that car ride home was not that enjoyable for him just listening to those guys go off. So sorry about that, mate.
Yeah.
But those guys took out the podium. And then Clint took out the best painted as well with his wonderfully painted Soulblight army. And then you took out the best sports. So out of those games, what do you think was kind of the defining factor that made it so enjoyable? Was it just you just got lucky and got on really well with your opponents, or is there something that you did or something that you try that helps that?
Well, at the end of the day, you got to remember that the game, like, there's both of you playing a game. Like, it's one thing to, like, crack the shits, and if your dice aren't rolling well or something like that happens, it's one thing to crack the shits about it, but it's another thing to just remember that someone else is playing with you. You're not playing a video game.
Hmm.
So, you've got to try and make it enjoyable for both parties when you're at the table. So, try not take things too seriously, because at the end of the day, dice is involved, things can go wrong.
Hmm.
It does happen in Age of Sigma. But overall, you just got to sort of, you got to have a laugh with your opponent. You got to just make sure that it's all just, it's all just, you're just there for fun, really. Like, winning's a byproduct as a result of that. So,
Yeah, yeah. It's the social contract of kind of both of you have come together for a game, whether it's at a tournament or a casual thing. You're both there because you
yeah,
enjoy the hobby. You want to have fun. So it's making sure that that's kind of in the forefront of your mind more than like winning at all costs. It's you both are having here to have fun first, and then one of you
yeah,
will win because it's a game and there is a winner and loser of it. So
yeah, for sure.
yeah. But the other reason that I wanted to talk to you is because you're kind of what I could describe as a renaissance man. So it's someone
Uh,
who excels at all aspects of a particular hobby or skill set or that type of thing. So it's something that at PMTT, polymath, being actually someone who is excels in multiple different fields, it's something that I try and focus on. So
yeah,
you got best sports. You also came second for best painted, and you got fourth, only dropping that one game against Paul in the
yeah.
battle. So you almost took out every type of trophy, which is
Yeah.
absolutely amazing to be able to walk away from a tournament and go, I competed at a top level in every aspect of the hobby is huge. So massive, massive congratulations to you for being able to claim that. You're one of the first people that has come to a gauntlet that has gotten such high scores in all the different aspects. Usually we've got someone who wins painting quite convincingly, but they don't do
I'll
so
be
well on the
honest.
table.
I'll be honest. I didn't know I came fourth. I didn't actually see the overall standings. So I'm pretty chuffed with that. But I thought I'd be a little bit lower than I was. But that's pretty good. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think, like, why, like, if you could pick kind of like one or two things, why do you think that, or what's a tip for a new player to try and do well at all aspects of the game?
My biggest tip would be you play to the players pack. You don't play to the event. You don't play the game. You play to the players pack. So a tournament will throw out all their tournament packs, to explain, where all their scoring is, and how they do their scoring, or they should. Um, in those aspects, you can pretty much play. You should be designing a list based on that event, not depending on whether it's a friendly event where it's more about just bringing armies together and just enjoying yourself, or whether or not that's an event where it's like hardcore competitive type list. So that way you sort of know what you're getting yourself into. But it just literally play to your event, read your players packs, then you won't be disappointed if in the end result sort of, or you should do well in most of the fields across that event, whether it be painting, sports, or battle. So that'd be one key big thing, was to always play to your players pack.
Yeah, yeah, and you can tell a lot from the different players packs. Like I know the GoldCon players pack was released today, and Nicole's specified which missions are going to be played there. She's specified how sports nominations and voting is going to work. Same with the painting. She's specified even the final structure. So it's a win loss, and then it's differential points, then it's victory points, and it's SOS, and you can see how the entire event's structured, and you can do exactly that. You can see where you're going to be able to get the points for the different aspects of it, and that's a huge thing. Every TO runs a different type of event. If you come to a Gauntlet event that's run by me, it will be different to one that's run by, say, the Brishammer guys or the Runax boys or Scott or Nicole down at Burley. They're all different events, and you need to play to that, exactly like you said. So, is there anything else that you could recommend for someone who's like someone like me? I usually do okay in painting. I usually do okay on the table. My sportsmanship needs a bit of work. I know that. I'm happy to admit that. Do you have any tips for someone who is just trying to get that last little like tool in their toolbox to get those extra couple of votes or get those extra couple of points?
Well, in sports, it's you just gotta. So I know when some people come to a tournament and they are a very competitive kind of person, um, they can't sort of switch it off. So that usually creates a very tense game, which is not what you want for things like sports. The biggest thing I can try and tell you is to try and turn it off. Like, don't let your wanting to win ruin the game.
Yep.
As far as battle goes, if you want to go to an event with a specific type of army or something of that nature, just make sure you're well drilled with it. So it's always better to be playing an army for many, many months and going to events with it rather than trying to constantly change your army, whether it be like a different type of army or whatever. And as far as painting goes, painting is just simply practice.
Yep.
So, there's all these different, nowadays there's all these different YouTube tutorials on how to teach you to paint certain things. Go through and look at those and then just try and replicate it as much as you can and just try and tidy up on all your little painting aspects as far as those sorts of things go.
Yeah, yeah. And that seems to be kind of the overall, like in my experience as well, the overall thing of if you want to get better at the game, play the game. Do more. If you want to get better at painting, paint more. If you want to get more sports nominations, play more, talk to people, like figure out, like if you get to the end of the game and you didn't have a great time, figure out why. And then keep that in your memory and go, cool, I didn't enjoy when I played this guy because he did this. And then don't do that to your opponents. Or if you do get a sports nom, figure out what you did and try and figure out why people thought they had such a great time against you. And the biggest thing, it's a learning experience. It's like we've both been involved in the hobby for over like 20 more years. We have that experience. We know what works. We know what doesn't. You can be completely different people too in different games. Like a game against you and me is going to be very different from a game you and a brand new person, or me versus one of my really close mates. So
it's also like you got to sort of. It's going to sound a bit weird, but you got to feel out a person, if that makes sense.
Feel out, not up. Out, not up.
Well, you could. Well, depending on the person. I mean, you could feel them up. It's completely up to you.
That's after you felt them out.
Yeah, exactly, right. Try and not make your opponent a little bit awkward or anything. So I wouldn't recommend turning up to a tournament in arseless chaps, for example. Yep. But I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah,
we're not here to stop anyone playing.
Yeah, exactly. Or people losing their breakfast a little bit too early. But whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. Like, the more you play, the better you'll get at all aspects of it. So, and Paddy here is a perfect example of that. He's been playing for ages, and so he does well at everything because he knows what he's on about. He tries to convince people that he's brand new, but he's really not.
It's my first day.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight, man. So the next Gauntlet is on the 23rd of July down at Irresistible Force. We do have a full house at the moment, but we are taking a waiting list just because with life the way it is, we're always going to get a couple of drops at the last minute. So if you're interested, sign up. You can find us on Facebook, or we're using Down Under Pairings to manage the playlist, so find us on that. We'd love to see you there. I don't know if you're registered or not. Are you coming to the next Gauntlet?
I am.
Excellent.
Yeah, I am.
Excellent. So
Yep.
it's the last tournament before GoldCon, which will be the next kind of big event in Queensland, which is looking really cool. Definitely pumped to read through the players pack later tonight.
I won't be going to that one.
Ah, that's a shame. That's a shame.
Yeah, I've got something else on, unfortunately, that
Yep.
weekend. But I'd love to go, but I can't. So
Oh, that's it. Life always gets in the way for some events, so nothing you can do unless you want to make your entire life about Warhammer or AOS, which we don't recommend. We don't recommend. We don't recommend. But thank you so much for coming on tonight, mate. Is there any
no
people you
worries.
wanted to shout out right at the end here?
I do, but I'm not allowed to swear.
I will. I'll bleep out everything apart from their name if you want.
Uh, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'll just keep it to myself. It's fine.
Okay, you can message them privately and say I was going to shout you out, but Henry didn't let me. So
Yeah.
all good. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.